Good evening, everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes until our official start time to let everyone join.
Good evening. Thanks, Kirsten.
And actually, as we wait for people to join, since we are down our secretary tonight, is anyone on the Crafton side willing to take notes? Rich is not going to be able to join us tonight.
Kirsten, this is Lydia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm willing to take notes.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I muted myself. I take notes directly into the Google Doc. So if you want to take actual notes, you can, Lydia, I can back you up with the Google Doc notes.
The Google Doc is fine, but if whoever takes notes, would you please also then clean them up afterwards so they're ready to submit to the borough?
Sounds good. Yep.
Sometimes our notes are shorthand and an outside reader wouldn't know what we meant by it. And we're supposed to have a joint meeting with Ingram tonight, so I'm going to give them a few more minutes to join before we do a call to order. All right, hello, we have a guest speaker here today as well. We haven't officially started yet. We're still waiting for a few people to join.
Hi.
Hello. I don't see anyone from Ingram on, but should we do a call to order and get started? We do have a speaker. Lydia, are you able to wait a few minutes? Because I would hope that Ingram could participate to hear from you.
Let me give Greg Butler a call quickly.
Okay.
I'm good till about 7. So if you wanted anything else you need to do.
We can start with some of our general business, but we usually start with Ingram Borough anyways, and they're not here.
Hey, Kirsten, I just got a hold of Greg Butler. He was at the Crafton Borough building. He thought this meeting was in person. So he's gonna
Oh,
run home, and I'm gonna make sure he has the link for the Zoom. And I'll send it to the other two Ingram people as
okay.
well, but we may want to get started.
All right, I emailed them the link, so they should have it. Although I just emailed it this evening, but they should have it in their emails.
Okay, great.
Well, let's go ahead and do our call to order. We'll start with a few other comments. We'll skip a few things on our agenda until Ingram is able to join, but let's go ahead and call to order. It's 6:34. Lydia Herring will be doing our note taking tonight in the absence of our secretary. Let's get started with roll call. Kirsten Compitello, I am here.
Eric Valchef, present,
Okay,
here.
Colton,
Colton Chandler's here. Sorry, I thought I was unmuted.
okay, and then Lydia Herring.
Lydia Herring's here.
Okay, and then we have a few other people on the line. So we have a guest speaker, Lydia Morin from Connect will be speaking in a little bit. We also have Greg Wozniak and Alice Glazer on the line. And we'll start with citizen comments. So Greg and Alice, if either of you would like to unmute, if you have any comments to start with.
No comment from Greg.
Okay. Go ahead and share my screen so we can all see the agenda. So we are going to have an eco-district discussion with Connect, but we'll skip that for a short bit here to let Ingram join. We'll skip past the Ingram Borough Planning Commission updates. And we'll move on to Crafton Borough Planning Commission updates for now. And our first update is about the zoning. We don't have an official answer yet, but Lydia's reached out to DCED again, and grant funding is anticipated. We did submit the zoning pamphlet to the newsletter. That was a full page pamphlet that Lydia put together. That was all submitted before the September 13th publication date. So that should be coming out with the next quarterly newsletter. There should be that full page info sheet with information about zoning and what it means, what it will mean for the community, to get people a little bit aware and informed before we officially kick off that zoning process, hopefully, if we get the grant funding. Lydia, you connected with DCED. Do you want to give any further updates on that?
Just that I had it on my calendar to call Nick Macareth sometime at the end of August or early September. So I did reach out, and he relayed that we were on his list to call as well, and that we are definitely still in the running, not only in the running for the money, but top of his list. So in his words, something kind of crazy would have to happen for us not to get funded.
Did he
And
say anything about date?
he said that he needed about 3 more weeks to get all the paperwork finalized, and then they would be notifying us formally. So I anticipate kind of hearing by the end of October.
Okay. Yeah, and hopefully with that first set of information, the zoning pamphlet that went into the newsletter, hopefully that kind of gets some community awareness going. We had also talked a few months ago about maybe turning that into additional things that we can put on social media or onto our website. So I think that was a good thing to start with. And maybe once we find out that the project is moving forward, once the grant funding is awarded, we can start repeating some of that educational stuff and putting out piece by piece on social media, or reconvening about where we'd like to share that information. The next item on our agenda is the Parks Master Plan update. I'll start, and Eric, you're welcome to jump in. You're on the Parks Master Plan Steering Committee also. Parks Master Plan had its second steering committee meeting last week, I guess. And they did this exercise where they gave us all paper money and they asked us to put it into different bags to indicate who wanted to invest in which projects. A lot of the steering committee members found it a little confusing. So actually what the exercise was for and what we talked a lot about was, it was kind of a way for the consultant to test out what was going to work well with the community and adjust their wording and make sure that the exercise and the activity was going to be clear to everybody. So I think it was helpful for that. And we certainly did have some conversations about how to adjust that to make it more clear and how to adjust the wording.
I thought it was a kind of a weird back door from the consultant to tell us all that you know, it's almost like it's not clear to her that the purpose of her project is to update the plan. But it was almost like, you know, it's never been there before. But anyway, I thought it was a strange and backdoor way of arriving at the fact that the current plan is absent the newly acquired borough property that would fall underneath green space, parks development, that sort of thing in the park plan. That property is formally referred to as, how many different names does it have? It's the property adjacent to the CIT ball fields. And there was a lot of discussion around thoughts, ideas, suggestions, and otherwise that had to do with the land that's being acquired by Crafton Borough as a municipality that is adjacent to the CIT ball fields.
I think we could definitely talk more about the parks plan, but in the interest of making sure we can have our guest speaker before she runs out of time. Should we go back to that now?
That's a great idea.
All comfortable with that?
Say hi to Mr. Butler.
Greg, you want to say, go back to our roll call?
Hi, everyone. Sorry. I was sitting in the parking lot of the Crafton Borough building.
Yeah, sorry, Greg, if we didn't let you know that we have not gone back to being in person.
That's all
We're
right.
still-
My whole life has. It's weird. I thought COVID was over, but it's not.
We all wish it were over. Do you know if anyone else from Ingram is planning to join tonight?
I don't know. I thought they would just be here. I assumed that. I guess that's not the case. I apologize.
Well, we'll share notes and we'll share the recording from tonight. We
Okay.
do have, we skipped past a few things to give you a chance to join, but we do have Lydia Morin here who's going to talk to us a bit tonight about the eco districts. So we're going to start with that. We'll go ahead and give the floor over to her in a minute to talk to us a bit about the eco district process and what we could do between our two municipalities to get started and to figure out what our next steps are, or figure out, you know, who else we might want to talk to help us move forward. Connect has been involved in some of the other eco districts that have been done in our region. So she agreed to join us tonight. So Lydia Morin, I think we'll pass it over to you.
Hey there, everybody. Good to see you, Greg.
Hi, Lydia.
As part of my role in Connect, I've had a great opportunity of working with Crafton and Ingram on your transit-oriented development toolkits, which I'd love to bring back to all of your attention again. And they would actually be very exciting to look at through an eco district lens. If you don't have a copy of those toolkits, I will actually send them again to Kirsten so that she can disseminate, although they are available on our website as the executive summary and the giant master document. each Connect community kind of got their own specific toolkit put together by nationally renowned consultants called Dover Cole, who are kind of the leaders in new urbanism and, different kinds of development that you might Connect got you for free and you might not know it because people turn over. But along the lines of an eco district, first I wanted to share that we also have, because you're both Connect communities, we have your greenhouse gas emissions data and where some of your biggest impact could be. I know that's not the discussion tonight, but I wonder if it wouldn't make sense to have Eric Robb, our community projects manager, come back and explain the Connect Climate Action Plan, the partnership with the PADEP, the funding opportunities, which could help you with your eco district funding, and the data that we've collected on your behalf. So I think I'm just going to tease that for now, because I only have 10 minutes to chat with you all about eco districts on your agenda. And so outside of Connect, before I even got involved with Connect, I was very heavily involved in founding the Aetna Community Organization, which was our anchor nonprofit in Aetna while we worked on a tri-borough eco district. It sounded to me from a conversation with Kirsten, and I think it was at maybe a ULI event, that Crafton and Ingram, as you're doing a joint planning commission and planning process.
That's right. We have a joint comprehensive plan already, and we are pursuing joint zoning.
So that is really cool. And I think funders are really interested in communities working together to make these plans and to have similar zoning. So you're really on the nose, because part of that transit-oriented development project was funded by the Richard King Mellon Foundation as a bit of a pipe dream to incentivize development in our region and make it easier if we could have much more unified and simple zoning available. And I don't know if you have had a chance to peek at Dormont's new form-based code, which I'm pretty sure is going to win a bunch of awards. But they took their recommendations from their TOD toolkit. They already had kind of a bucket of money that they leveraged along with DCED, who loved that they were doing this together. And they funded a beautiful new zoning process. And they did it during COVID with a very engaged community. And I could really see Ingram and Crafton, borrowing a lot from that process, not having to do it a whole new way. And Ben Estelle, the manager of Dormont, has been just an excellent connector, because as a member of Connect and a leader within Connect, part of what we do for each other is share our knowledge and share our processes and encourage each other to, level up or try the thing that we tried that worked, rather than them having to, push a rock up a hill over and over again. So I've got a lot of different ideas for you. I think the most compelling argument to be made to local funders like private foundations is that you're doing it together. You are working on environmental justice issues within it and accessibility. And I could get into detail about the protocol, but maybe for this meeting, you all could ask some questions and I could try to answer them. And then if you wanted, we could come back and talk about sort of how we're seeing the Connect Climate Action Plan and how well it integrates with Eco District Protocol and like a more kind of robust presentation in the future, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's great. We have done, between the joint planning commissions, we have done some initial research and fact finding, and we've done a couple of information sessions. So we all have learned a bit about, and then put together some presentation materials for the community about what the protocol is, what the,
Right.
what Eco District itself is. But what we would love to talk to you about is how we translate that into getting it started. And Connect is a great resource. for helping communities like ours figure out who should we talk to next, or where should our first step be. And I don't want to open it up to everyone to ask some questions if they have any.
Before I go, and that's a great idea. I'm right with you, Kirsten, but I do want to stress that the Tri-Borough Eco District, because it had a major riverfront and trail project attached to it, it had a couple of big development projects attached to it that just needed a little extra funding from them to get over it. And that it was 3 communities working together. They were able to come together and get $2 million from the Hillman Foundation. And a huge part of that didn't go to these capital projects that were already kind of playing into a lot of the eco district hopes and dreams, was that they were able to hire the consultants that basically wrote the eco district protocol, and that's Christine Mondor and Evolvier, and they've worked heavily with eco districts from the beginning. And what was really exciting was working with them was that they took on a lot of this part that we're doing right now, and they had amazing tools to engage community, and they've done it in multiple communities around our region. So having that expertise, those extra hands, and just that energy is the reason Etna became the world's first eco district. We had the money to kind of have, we had a borough council that was like, yes, let's do this. We don't necessarily have everything we need. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Hillman wouldn't be excited about perhaps helping Ingram and Crafton doing a multi-borough, a joint borough eco district, if there's a place that makes sense, which, having walked around your communities, I think there are, and I'm sure you have already identified them in your preliminary stuff. So anyway, I wanted to emphasize the part where, yes, we had a lot of really awesome experts and enthusiastic leaders in our community as residents, myself included. What got us over that hump was having the consultants, and I got to give so much credit to Christine Mondor and Evolvier. And basically, if anyone comes to me and says, we want to do an eco district, I say, try to get the money together and get Christine on board somehow, or her team, who she's now trained really well. Of course, there are other firms, but there aren't other firms that literally wrote the protocol. So that is.
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Are you saying that they were able, that the Tri-Borough area in Etna and Sharpsburg, that they were able to, and Millvale, that they were able to get the funding together and really jumpstart their eco district because they had catalyst projects already happening?
A little bit. I think that helped a lot. The Riverfront project was a huge trail connector for the trail that goes along the Allegheny River down to downtown. Mm-hmm. And so getting that piece together was a really big deal, because there's kind of these missing gaps from Aspinwall along the river, and Etna was a big piece of that. Our borough manager literally took on the railroad and won, which is unprecedented. She went back and found crazy old documents to be able to make that development. And that was a big piece of the funding. I think this was $2 million over 2 or 3 years. So it wasn't every year. And the really big part was that this did not actually go to the boroughs. The boroughs were enthusiastically voting in favor of it, passing the climate action plan, but the eco district planning funding went to like the local CDCs. So there were 3 of them. There's the Sharpsburg Neighborhood Organization, the Etna Community Organization, and then in Millvale, it was New Sun Rising. And the Etna Economic Development, and then within Etna, there were actually 2. There was Etna Economic Development and Etna Community Organization. And Etna Economic Development is actually the organization that received the grant and helped administer it to these other kind of on the ground neighborhood organizations. It's not to say that it couldn't be done another way, but that was how we did it. And it is complicated, to be fair.
It is, I think, a constraint for us that we don't have a neighborhood organization. We don't have a CDC. We don't have a like business bureau or chamber of commerce or anything of that sort that could be the funnel. We
It's
have
possible. It's harder. It's possible that it's harder to get the private foundation for local government but I'm not positive. I've never tried. And I don't think it's worth crossing off or saying that's a constraint quite yet. Especially if you all are feeling really like you're going to be the super volunteers for the community engagement. Because the other piece of, and you've already started to show that you are. So I think that's not out of the realm of possibility. At the same time, I think there are a lot of different planning grant opportunities at the state that you could qualify for to do an eco district plan, especially if you do pass the climate action plan, because with Connect, working with the DEP on a Connect wide climate action plan, one of the goals is to have a significant number of our members pass their own climate action plan with help either from a DEP intern or working with Connect and kind of taking our boilerplate and adapting it to yours and passing a resolution. And once that happens, the DEP has sort of committed, you know, an undisclosed number of dollars to funding some pilot projects. And perhaps some of the pilot projects within Connect would be helping multiple municipal eco district plans happen in other places. For example, Homestead, West Homestead, and Munhall are working on a joint comp plan, and an eco district idea around there has been floated. And so it's possible if all these Connect communities that want to do this thing go together and ask, because I do think that's also why Hillman went for the funding. They said, okay, there's a coalition of different people who normally only work within their boundaries who are saying, we're going to work across boundaries. And that was really exciting to them.
When Millvale started, it wasn't a tri-borough yet, is that right?
That's
Did
right.
they go after funding altogether, or did they each initiate individually and then proceed together after a certain point?
You know, I think Hillman actually approached them maybe to bring them together. I know Millvale worked on it for a long time. I'm not the expert on this history. You know who is Zaheen Hussein. He's no longer with New Sun Rising. He's attending grad school at Hines, but he was truly the architect, I think, along with Brian Wolovich and Scott Wolovich in Millvale for a very long time. And they actually had to sort of help Millvale turn over its council to be able to do it. As a part of the history, I kind of remember them telling us, but I wasn't involved then. But it is different. So so I think the way that we got certified, though, Aetna started so much after Millvale, but Aetna got certified first as an eco district. And they did choose to do separate eco districts in each of the towns, and that was fine. But it wasn't truly, it's a kind of, they are kind of separate the way that it ended up happening in the tri-borough. And I think there are ways to make it a little less separate. And that could be what Crafton and Ingram attempt to do and prove is possible. And that would be interesting to, I think, a lot of different people who have money.
So I know we have a limited amount of your time, so I'm going to make sure everyone on the Planning Commission has a chance. Thank you for being here with us tonight to just give us a little bit of your experience and expertise with how this process has worked. Does anybody have any other questions that they'd like to ask?
Maybe just if Lydia is willing to provide any contact information for the couple people she mentioned.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be happy to give you guys intros.
That'd be wonderful.
I will also encourage you, if you aren't yet coming to the Connect Climate Action Committee meetings, that might be something that to send someone. If you, I mean, we'd love to have you back at the executive committee meetings. You're each entitled to send up to 3 people to those.
And Ingram does attend those, right? Greg attends those.
Yeah, I haven't recently.
We've missed him for a little bit, but we won't hold it against him.
For Crafton, the delegate is, or the representative is Doug. And I'm not sure if he's been attending, but he is supportive, right?
He hasn't said he isn't, but I haven't seen him in a long time. So all I'm saying, you can have others come to so the executive committee, each municipality may designate 1 to 3 people to kind of vote for them on the executive committee, which is really only important when we're passing resolutions. Anyone can attend an executive committee meeting to learn, to share about their municipality. They just wouldn't have necessarily voting if they haven't been appointed as the representative in their January meeting. But that could also happen at any time in the year. It's not super tight. At the same time, our working groups and our sort of subcommittees within the working groups, those are super open to anybody. And we have other people who are just on planning commissions who attend those, and who are or maybe just work in public works. And those folks are really helpful to have on board, getting this information sort of directly from a lot of different sources that we like to bring together in our meetings. So open invitation is sort of what I'm extending here to anyone who's involved in this work, to climate action, the Climate Action Planning Committee. I think you all would either contribute or get a lot, probably both. And in the TOD stuff, I want to come back and share a little more with all of you, because you're all, except for Greg, I think everyone is new. And I think that's stuff that you would find useful in some of the stuff that you're doing.
And we do, I'd be happy for you to share them again, just to make sure we have the final versions. Although I'm pretty sure we do. I know I've had drafts at different points as well, but we have seen at least the drafts. We have looked them over, and we do talk about those pretty regularly, I think, in our planning commission. So we're all familiar with the TOD study. Still, again, happy to have you send the final versions to make sure we have the final and best.
They're probably final if you have them. I don't think we sent a lot of drafts out for the TOD toolkit.
Well, I got a hold of one at one point.
Oh, you got one then. That the other piece is, as you do your zoning, I do think having Ben, Estelle, or actually, you know what I'll do is I'll send you the link to the presentation that we gave at the PCRG summit that was all about basically the Connect zoning process and how Dormont took it and like ran with it. Because Ben talks for a long time in that about how he got it together, what his RFP process was like, how he selected the people to do the zoning rewrite, and how he helped his community understand that form-based code would really help out a lot. And it took a lot, but he did it. He modeled a really great way to do it. So he might be someone interesting to, or you can watch the video of him saying what he'd probably say to you, and then maybe you have him just for a Q&A at some point.
We did all talk a bit about the Dormont code in one of our previous meetings, because we know that our zoning is coming up, and we did share that example. So that's a good idea to reach out to them and get a little bit more information about how they did it, especially if that is something that can, maybe help us position that to also then lead into an eco-district process.
Yeah, and I'm curious for you all, are you imagining, where are you imagining your eco-districts?
We honestly haven't gotten that far yet.
I mean, it
We've
really could
also-
be your whole community.
We have fairly small communities, and some of our assets are very dispersed in different areas. We have the creek, which goes all the way to Carnegie, and the business districts and the busway also kind of attach at regular intervals all the way to Carnegie. And Carnegie, to give an update to everyone, they have also expressed that they're interested, but I have not been able to set a date to speak with Deneen in more detail. So I'll continue trying to do that.
That's exciting. Deneen comes to every Climate Action Committee meeting with Connect. And that was my next thing. Is like, I feel like you could probably get Carnegie involved in your eco-district process.
They're definitely interested in one too. I think the question for us that we'd all have to decide at some other point, but we would have to decide if we want to do it all together or do them as adjacent efforts, but with boundaries that don't connect, because Ingram and Crafton are smaller communities that are very integrated into each other. Carnegie is a little more distanced from us.
So it all sounds really exciting. I do think the more folks you have and the more congruent you can make it, the more exciting it is to the funders who are looking for innovation in this sense. Not having distinct, but I think this is a great team. So
I have a question for you, which is that the Planning Commission here has been very excited about this idea. We've been talking about it for a while, but we also have very limited capacity to really do it ourselves. So our efforts to move it forward have been slow. And we know that we don't necessarily need a consultant to start an eco district, but we do need a lot of time to organize it and get it started. And so I think one of the questions we're really trying to figure out is how much do we start on our own? Will that put us in a better position to pursue funding? Or can we pursue the funding and try to get some help to get the whole thing started in the first place? Do we have some of that community movement already happening to be able to get funding to move further?
I think it helped that we had some really tireless volunteer leadership in the community in Etna. But I don't think that's the reason we got the funding necessarily. So I think you might want to try a little bit of both. Like, I don't know if you're already getting funding from DCD to do your zoning, is it possible that in the RFP that you then put out for that you want, maybe you can include like some preliminary eco district organization?
That's an interesting idea. It's not, we already have, the RFP has already been put out and the consultant selected.
Oh, got it.
This was then just put on pause because we had a potential funding source. Kind
Yeah.
of a long, complicated story, but the RFP is already out and the consultant is already selected and ready to go once we release the funds.
And that's for zoning.
For the zoning. Mhm.
Well, maybe just even a little bit when they do the public input and the community engagement in that, maybe there's a little something you can do to keep the appetite wet for eco districts in that process. Yeah, I don't have a really good answer. I really don't. I think if you are focused on zoning right now, though, there's got to be a way that you can put some eco district protocol into that, or just not even protocol, but just sort of lens as you look at your zoning and be intentional about it. But I also feel like there's only so many humans, and that's going to be quite a bit of work for you all. So I don't know that you all have the capacity to like try to do a bunch of, so I will say we did 2 years of monthly dinners for about 100 or so, like 50 to 100 residents of Etna at our fire hall. And that was also part of the funding that helps. We could buy them all dinner. We got pizzas, local pizzas, provided, I think we just brought our own drinks, and it really helped to have that monthly meeting where Evolvier basically gave us a master class on each piece of what an eco district needed. And I just can't emphasize how much that helped with all the community understanding, like the connection to things. And I think you guys could do that on your own, but it is an incredible amount of work. That's why you pay consultants to do it. So I might say you try to pursue, especially if you've got some environmental justice issues or some accessibility issues, you might be able to maybe have some meetings with funders saying, hey, we're two communities who are so intertwined. There's a lot of funders who are really interested in municipalities working very closely together, especially around planning and service delivery. It's possible that you could get something together from one of them to do this process of just eco districts with a separate consultant aside from your zoning.
Lydia, before we lost you, I'm just gonna say I'm very new to this. I appreciate your time in coming out and talking to us, but I'm looking for something very specific. In your experience, we have, I will say, 2 councils. They're not very well educated. This group has become somewhat educated on this, thanks mostly to Kirsten and Lydia and Greg. But we're by no means your level of expertise. How do we and what do we do prior to funding, prior to, I mean, how do we get a dialogue? What are the top 5 reasons for an eco? Where do I find that? Where do I get the speaking points for it beyond what's on the websites? Like, how do you get brass tacks talking to conservative Pittsburghers about what the hell an eco district is and why they should even spend a moment thinking about it? Where do you get those kinds of conversations started?
Well, really, this is the same thing that we're having with a climate action plan. It really is about community resiliency, right? And your vulnerabilities. What is vulnerable now? And so I don't know if flooding is affecting your region in your neighborhoods at all, or if landslides have affected your region. I'm not sure what your vulnerabilities are, but I imagine a part of your vulnerability might be folks moving out. But I don't know. So I don't know a lot about your community.
Yeah, we don't have population change. We don't have flooding. We have flooding and, sewage and, basements backing up, that sort of thing. But that's
You have flooding.
$30 million worth of repairs are happening to our sewer pipes to mitigate that. Our flooding issues aren't of the scale that Etna, that Millvale, that places along the river are. We don't have flight and population. We actually have the first time our population has grown in 28, 32 years, something like that. So we don't have, you know what I mean? We don't have anything that's like that. Motivating, self-starting, salient points of why an eco district to the average person who's lived here for 20 plus years and says, what is this? And why should I be interested?
I think that is sort of a job of you all, is to figure out what your community, what aspects of the eco district your community would be responsive to. What we did through our process was we broke them out into air quality, and we talked about, I don't know if I mean, it is a problem for you because you live in Allegheny County. So you've got bad air, and you probably have heightened levels of asthma in your youth. You probably have heightened levels of lead in your homes and children. That could be a thing to make a talking point around health. You may not have flooding, but you may have poorer water quality coming into your home. You might have sewage backups. Those things could be things that motivate people. So water, your energy, you might have high gas bills. You might have homes that, I think a big part of what the Connect Climate Action Plan is going to target is middle class home upgrades for energy efficiency and accessibility to those things and incentives to do so. So I think thinking about energy could be a big thing for your community. These books are all available on our website, these little booklets they have. And then the other one is food. I don't know what your food system looks like. I don't know if you have food deserts. I don't know if you have populations that are food insecure, but those types of things could really be very attractive to funders around food and access to it. I think that is a piece that was huge in Etna, actually. We don't have a grocery store. We had limited access to public transit that went to grocery stores. And, it helped us with talking to the Port Authority about getting better routes and different things like that. So it's possible food could be a really important angle for your community. And it might be a big part of your community identity. There might be assets around that, because the other part of the eco district is emphasizing the assets, right? So food, mobility, you're on the transit conversation already. I don't know if there's more to be done there or not, but for Etna, we are on a major highway. We're 10 minutes from downtown, but we had people in our community who did not have access to 10 minutes to downtown. They don't have cars. The transit wasn't great. The sidewalks weren't great. People couldn't get to daycares. Getting around town, if you have a stroller, is tricky. So those kinds of accessibility things were a big deal to our community residents. And we started talking about what mobility meant for everybody. So mobility could be a thing. And that's walking, biking, rolling, however you get around. And then all of this is sort of under the lens of equity. So I don't know exactly where things are going in your municipalities or how things are going in your communities around feeling that you've nailed equity, but Etna felt, there's probably a lot more we could do. And, you know, our community is pretty homogenous, but, you know, we do have folks in our community that maybe don't feel as included within it just because they're newer and they've moved in recently. And what can we do to be kind of an equitable, welcoming community and different kinds of movement around that. But under equity, it's, can we all have the healthiest air possible to breathe? Can we have clean water to drink and interact with in our creek? Can we not have it ruining our belongings in our homes? These are the kind of things that really resonated in Etna anyway.
Lydia, thank you. Those are tremendous things to think about. And I think for our group, the one that you honed in on that I think that we underrepresent in our community, we should really spend more time on is the inclusion concept. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you guys. I am really excited to spend more time with you if you want. And I'd love to come back and talk more about the climate action plan and how that data could be leveraged in your funding asks in the future.
I think that sounds great to hear about that too. And I think our first step before asking you to come back to talk about that is to connect with Doug, who's our borough manager and is our Connect member. And
Oh, Doug Sample. Sorry.
Yes, see what he's already heard about it or shared about it. Because he might, you know, that might be something that should be presented to council.
Yeah, and you know what I am doing, and actually what we're doing as a whole is we haven't, almost in 2 years, as long as the pandemic has gone on, we usually try to make like an annual visit to most of our members' councils. And so we do that. We help do that too. So, you know, it could be possible that sometime in 21 or 22, we get on that agenda to kind of catch up with you all. But yeah, I was not picturing Doug Sample when you said Doug. So obviously, yes, your manager is a member and he has attended. I don't know what I was thinking. He's not as involved in the climate action plan, I have to say, but that's okay because he's involved in other things.
Mhm.
So great.
Yeah, are there any other questions for Lydia? I know we only intended to take a small amount of your time tonight, but this was really helpful just to let everybody, you know, ask you some questions and hear your perspective of what other communities have done and what can help us take our first steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will certainly reach out to you again. But
Yeah,
thank you
follow
for
up with
joining
all the
us.
things that I said I would do because I get so excited when I talked about this stuff that I forget what I've said. So hopefully this recording isn't crazy and doesn't get all over the internet.
Thanks, thanks,
We
Lydia.
posted on our website.
Okay. All right, everybody. Good
Well, yeah,
to see
thank
you.
you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, have a good one.
All right, well, we have a lot that we could talk about with eco districts. I'm gonna let any of the rest of you suggest any discussion if you have it, or we can kind of think about this and follow up on researching a little bit more and come back to this next time, because we do have a lot on our agenda right now with the zoning coming up as well. So I think if we do pursue an eco district, the steps will be relatively slow until at least the zoning is underway. So we're not launching two things at the same time.
Right. My only thoughts were, those were really good questions. I particularly liked Eric's question. And she gave a really good answer. I started thinking, you know, eco districts is I think what scares people is you're throwing even myself, you're throwing a giant concept at them with with a big, I guess, not so fancy, but a big name. And, you know, they don't know what to make of it, but everything she mentioned is just community improvements with equity in mind, inclusion, and sustainability. Those are the three words that I wrote down. So really, we just need to frame it as, you know, improving the community, but with those ideas as the, you know, larger framework. And I think that would help kind of water it down a little bit for residents and councils.
And, you know, we still have that brainstorm document that we started some months ago. It's still online. It's still, we can still add to it, where we were putting in a lot of ideas for just things we already have and that we already do that we could improve or better promote through something like this, and other things that we could address. I think that is still a good thing to start and to keep talking about, because it gives those examples of things that are actually relevant in our communities. We're not a riverfront community. We have different assets and different issues here.
Yeah, she mentioned the word vulnerability, and I don't really know what our vulnerabilities are, to be honest. It just got me thinking a little bit. I need to figure that out, do a little research. Because I sit on council, but our residents don't really come to our meetings, and they don't really interact with me a whole lot, or any of us, except for the pothole complaints and things like that. I don't really know where the real vulnerable population is. It's a good point. So I will be looking into that.
Perhaps that's a page that we can add to our brainstorm document, because we had been annotating down areas that we could build off of, strengths that we have that we could build off of, also improvements that affect our communities or that would be useful here. But maybe specifically a tab for vulnerabilities to kind of think about it from that lens as well. I know I have some additional conversations that I want to have and people I want to reach out to try to figure out more what our first steps could be. I think if we weren't doing the zoning right now, we probably would just throw ourselves into moving forward with this a little bit faster. And I personally, see what you all think, but I think we probably want to go a little slower and let the zoning launch first, and then be thinking in the background about how to segue into this.
I completely agree.
But in the meantime, we can continue looking into ideas for the borough and just spreading the word about what this is and what it could be, getting people a bit excited, and then start to look into, maybe make a list of some of the funding sources that we can suggest to Doug to look into.
Is Doug your permanent manager now, or is he still interim? I kind of lost track.
He's still interim as far as I know. I haven't heard of that changing.
Okay.
Do we want to continue any eco district discussion right now, or do we want to go on with our agenda? Our next item was to do the Ingram Borough Planning Commission updates.
I think we should continue.
Yeah, I'm good to move on.
So Jim Marsilio just texted me. He said his computer hard drive went out. Don't have a new one yet. So that's why he didn't join. I haven't heard from Aaron. I apologize. We had a meeting scheduled last week. And again, these guys didn't show up. I was kind of, I went to the borough building and I sat there and waited for them, and they didn't come. So I guess I got to, I don't know what I need to do. Get them more excited about what we're doing, I guess. So I do apologize. I don't really have anything to report other than our pedestrian plan is kind of coming to an end. Kirsten, you know of this, of course, but all the public input has been completed, and all the ideas have been gathered, and I think the draft plan is coming together. A couple more steering committee meetings, and then a presentation of the plan. So I'm pretty excited. I got to see some of the ideas down at the park when they had when Michael Baker had the public ice cream social, and I loved what I saw. I loved the conversation. I love the ideas. I couldn't be happier. So I'm excited for it to be finished so we can move on to other stuff. But that's really it planning wise in Ingram. I'm going to ask Aaron and Jim to really think about the eco district stuff and contribute to the site, because I haven't done it either and I feel horrible about it. I truly do. So we'll get a little more involved in that. But hopefully zoning's on its way because I think that's even more important. So I guess we may hear more about that on the agenda. That's all I really have.
I had just one question for you. If you could maybe share a little more. You guys are intending to do a complete streets ordinance, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Do you want to tell us a little about that?
Yeah. Well, that was part of the proposal that Michael Baker gave us. That was one of the things I got excited about. That did show up in one of the competitive proposals, but I love the idea of complete streets, and I just thought, a little bit of guidance on how to draft an ordinance and what it really means and how we can explain it to the community would be great. I can't say I fully understand it myself. I've been on complete street webinars before. It was quite a while ago. I just, again, know it's, it would fall under that inclusive and equitable idea of everyone has access to the streets safely, and again, fits right into the eco district framework. So other than, I'm really excited about it. That was one of the reasons I gravitated towards that proposal.
I know the ordinance isn't written yet, but when it is out, I think we'd like to share that with Crafton to look at.
Yes.
Because we're redoing a lot of our streets as well and having issues with things like old sidewalks and things like trees that we don't have space for.
Mm-hmm.
Very proud of being a tree community, but we're also removing a lot of those trees because they are in very small spaces and they're making the sidewalks buckle. And council is kind of addressing it on a one at a time basis, but we don't really have a standard approach towards how we do our streets or how we protect our street trees and our sidewalks. So I think we might look at what Ingram does and then think about what we might be able to do in our community.
Yep, I love it. We'll definitely share it.
All right, well, we can move on to Crafton Borough Planning Commission updates. We actually got started on this as
I
our
just want to ask Greg, just one question. Ingram doesn't have a CDC, correct?
No.
So the only, in terms of this valley, the only ones that are doing anything in terms of an active, like invested in, like noteworthy CDC is McKees Rocks at this point. Have you guys all looked at what their vision is?
McKees Rocks?
Yeah, McKees Rock CDC is phenomenal.
I
Well,
think,
Rocks
Lydia,
has gotten a lot of investment though.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of going with this is, I'm trying to make the connection of why is Millvale, maybe it's how is Millvale like us? And I keep hearing the trail, the riverfront, that access, and it seems like the connection from McKees Rocks to Carnegie is kind of what would be the glue that would make this all work. It's, no offense, it's not Ingram and Crafton, it's Carnegie through McKees Rocks. It would be that whole thing, and that's my opinion. I know that you guys disagree completely with that, but I just think that you have a massive vision for huge development, big investment. And there's been talk, I know when they built the casino, that they were supposed to connect downtown through Crafton to the Rails to Trails initiative up through Carnegie, and that never happened, but I think there was money put aside for it. But my point is, like, are we thinking too small with this? Should we broaden our scope and actually talk to a greater stretch of the community? Maybe that would actually get people more excited about this, because I'm still struggling with, how do I get my neighbor across the street that care about this? I mean, I care about it, but how do I get others to actually think about it?
I mean, I think it's not a bad idea to reach out to McKees Rocks. I don't know. I mean, it kind of sounds like you're suggesting we consider a quarter area, quatra area. I don't know what word you'd use there. Like a 4-part eco district, maybe, which sounds like a lot to take on, but it also sounds like a good conversation to have, to reach out to McKees Rocks CDC and see what they're interested in.
Well, that's what I mean, you know, it's like anything else. Websites are pretty. I don't know anything about it, but I was just blown away by the thought and the investment and the time that's gone into what they're proposing or, you know, considering. And I just think about it, you know, I constantly think about Carlinton School District. I know Ingram has nothing to do with it, but I think about, you know, Carnegie has a downtown, Crafton's never kind of a downtown.
Honestly,
you know,
I think that's one of our vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
That we don't have a downtown. We don't have much local business. We don't have a strong tax base outside of housing. The school district is suffering financially. I see us as one of our vulnerabilities is that we are kind of good enough, but we're a little stuck, and we
We're
need
an ordinary bedroom community.
we
You've
need
got
to
it.
move forward, because if we don't do that, what we currently have is going to continue to just be a little bit harder to maintain and harder to pay for.
That's very
And the
true.
school district is not going to sustain itself if we don't do something to generate more revenue to support it.
I mean,
And
I can't agree with that more, Kirsten. I think it's our growth is growth in context, because we don't have that one project. We don't have that hotel that's going to go in place that's going to save the day. You know what I mean? We don't have that, you know, one big thing, you know, Crafton Ingram Shopping Center. I'm sorry, you know, no offense, Greg, but there's not even a liquor license on the other side of it to put in a, you know, brewery or whatever. I mean, it's never, and there's no interest there. Those people, they don't, you know, I feel bad for you. There's just zero interest in anything but status quo in Ingram, period. Full stop. Pump the brakes hard.
I totally agree.
I mean, so, you know, we can zone and rezone and spend money upon good money, upon bad money, sideways, upside down money, until we figure out a way to have a dialogue with people to say, hey, you know what? You go to North Canton, Ohio, and you see what that Fatheads Brewery did for their little town. Wow. Didn't bring in crime, didn't change anything, but boy, it made the prices of real estate go up. You know, those are the kinds of things that, you know, I think that if we're going to have meaningful dialogue around eco district, I want to translate that into, you've lived here for 27.5 years, or you've lived here for 43 3/4 of a year. You've lived here your whole life. This is what it can do to your property value. You're not going to live here forever. Florida's calling, right? You're going to want to sell your house. Right now, your house went from 120 to 180. Pretty soon, with a plan like this, it could go to 300. Don't you want that to happen? Lean in. Lean forward over your skis, get involved, or even don't get involved, but get behind it. Allow it to happen. Support these kinds of initiatives so that we can grow as a community in the context of our neighbors. I don't know. That's just my take on all this stuff, is I'm trying to figure out how, you know, I think we should do it, but would be better if we can get everybody behind it.
I love what you just said. I think for sure we have to filter it down. Again, it's that word vulnerabilities that she used. As soon as she said it, I thought, you know what, that's it. We got to define that.
Yeah.
We have to communicate that. We have to do that before we even speak with our neighboring communities, because we're doing it for our communities first, right? Obviously they can help us.
Right.
But I don't, oh, my dog just grabbed, I'm sorry, something. I don't know what our vulnerabilities are. I don't know Ingram's, and I definitely don't know Crafton's. And I've lived in this area my whole life. So I think that's where we have to start. And I think that's where we could start as a group for sure. I think we have a nice mix of ages and we have a nice mix of perspectives. I think we could do a really nice job to get it going. And, you know, baby steps. I think if we throw a giant concept to Ingram Council, you're right, Eric. They're super conservative. They drive me crazy. And I think they're just going to go, no, we're not touching.
They're
whatever
not
that
bad
is."
people.
Like residents don't even know what zoning is, let alone eco districts. You know, they just don't understand how a good zoning ordinance can change a community. I didn't even understand that until probably 2 years ago. So it's kind of like we have to tie that all together and that's when we start presenting to our residents. So they can say, yeah, I get it. Or I didn't know, I understand, you know, but nothing too crazy, nothing too big at first.
Well, you know, I think that's, you know, I try and think of it in terms of kitchen table talk, right? Waffle House speak. And $80,000 can turn into a 40 or $60 million return on investment. I'm sorry,
Yep.
what? Let's say that again in plain English. $80,000 can turn into a 40 or $60 million return on investment. How's that possible? Well, because you're making the conditions right for doing business in your town, which creates opportunities, which then drives the value of your property up, which then drives the ability of your school district, the ability of your community to do more, right? So the total return on investment for a couple of $1,000 can be dozens and dozens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And how do you turn that into, how do you make that sound like it's not buffoonery that you hear on the cable TV show?
I think you just show them examples, you know?
And that's why I look to McKees Rocks has big eyes. Like they're thinking about developing their waterfront to the tune of, I would say 30, 40, $50 million. I don't know. It looks massive to me. So how can that benefit us? How can the talk and the idea and the lens of that benefit us? And you think about the real and tangible, I lived here for 20 years. Carnegie was not a place that I would walk around 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now, my kids go for a walk there. It's tangible. It's real to people. So how do we take those sorts of things and market them? How do we take those sorts of things and package them? When you use words like eco district, I'm sorry. Think about my neighbor. Alice, you're on the phone. Call in. Tell us, what do you think if somebody says the word eco district to you and the people that you speak to and have coffee with? What does that mean? I have a tough time thinking that that's palatable. Or, not that they're offended by it, but they're just not interested.
You're absolutely right that we have to communicate what it is well beyond just the name, because the name is just a branding. And it's not a name that we
jargon. Yeah.
It's branding, it's jargon, it's something that people who control funding and grants get excited about. And so if we can stick that label on our plan to improve our playgrounds and our sidewalks, then we've just made our help us improve our parks and sidewalks look like a really fun, great, award-winning kind of thing that people want to give us money for because it's the new and buzzy thing, even though it's really just branding. And what we're talking about is what we need to communicate to our residents, not that branding name, but what are the things that it can do for us? What are the ways this can impact our community? And it's things like air quality and cleaning up the area around the creek. It's things like improving our connectivity and sidewalks and improving our senior services and senior accessibility and mobility. I think we started that pretty detailed list some months ago, and let's keep adding to that and brainstorming off of that, because that is a good repository of the kinds of ideas we're having, and just putting that down in writing will help us figure out how to refine our message, figure out how to phrase it.
I
I
agree.
feel like I derailed us.
No, I thought it was a good, really good comment. I enjoyed it. Thank you. You know, we also have to remember that, you know, the greater Pittsburgh, well, the whole southwestern Pennsylvania, we're not seeing an influx of population. So we really truly are all competing for the same customer. And, you know, the East End's kind of they're kind of winning the battle with Millville and Sharpsburg in there. You know, communities I thought I'd never, you know, Eric, you mentioned Carnegie. Well, you know, I remember East Liberty. It was absolutely horrible. Now my kids hang out there and they're safe and it's fun and it's
I would
interesting, you know.
actually- I would actually say that's another one of our vulnerabilities, that there's so much investment and there's so much interest in other communities, and there's not really much around us. And, you know, people in our communities like living here, but outside Crafton and Ingram, no one externally is coming here and seeing us as a place to invest. Right. So we're kind of missing out on that, all of that.
But I
Attention
think
is going everywhere else. And I feel like we don't have to, we just have to start putting ourselves in the running.
yeah, that's it. Because I think we all know we're poised to be a player without a doubt. Our properties, our infrastructure, our location, our governments, I think, or at least Ingram's, like, I can't speak for, I think we're ready to go. We just need to start really thinking how, which direction we're going to head. That's all.
And that might be one of the messages that we try to put out towards our communities as well, that, well, to wordsmith this, but to your point, Eric, how do you describe this to people? Well, do you have to even describe a specific concept in order to get them interested in helping craft what the concepts might be? Or can we just talk about how there's investment to be had and there are grants out there and other communities are getting them, and we're doing this because we don't want to let it pass us by.
Yeah.
We're not going to get any funds if we don't ask for them. So we want to ask for them. And then it'll be a community process to figure out what the eco-district should be, what are our goals and strategies within it. That's all prepared with community input.
Yep. Nobody knows vulnerabilities better than the people themselves. I mean, really all we're talking about is community, improvement, just done in a very smart way. All TOD is bringing communities back to the way they used to be. Before the suburbs made us all spread out and build these giant highways that we can't afford to maintain. It's just, again, it's all just coming back to integration, equity, all of those ideas, us all living together again, walking amongst each other, all sharing the streets through complete streets. I mean, it's just going back to where we came from. That's why I love it so much. Bringing the community back. I think that'll get people excited.
Keep Crafton and Ingram walkable.
Yeah.
Everyone's on board with that.
I mean, we love living here because we sit on our front porch and we see dozens of people walk by. They all wave. It's great. It's a great community.
The traffic's increased. I don't know if it's just COVID, but people are out more. And, hopefully if there's anything good from COVID, it's gotten people out of their homes a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we, when you can, that you do. So here's what I did. I'm going to force us to move on, and I apologize for the rabbit hole. I'm good at it, but I apologize for it. So in the brain dump, I just put in 9/28/2021. I put in, how can we address our vulnerabilities, right? Vulnerabilities. I put in, what are our vulnerabilities? And I put in a statement, a little exercise. We can never dream of how big McKees Rock can dream, because we can't have an old town, a harbor front, shopping. So we don't have it. We don't have the geographical landscape that they can dream about, but they can, and we can. So I put it in there. Take a look at it. It's pretty freaking cool. So how can we grow in context of their dream? So my challenge to my colleagues is to put in some ideas there about how can we address our vulnerabilities? What really are our vulnerabilities? And then the exercise around McKees Rocks. Deal?
Sounds good.
Everyone spend 5 minutes with that between now and the next time we get together?
I think you might want to also add something about what might a catalyst project be. Because whether it comes out of something like this or whether it comes separately, and we'll get to this, Crafton is doing its parks master plan right now. The one that comes to my mind first is the creek. If we can get any other kind of funding to do upgrades to the creek, to do cleanup, it certainly qualifies for EPA funding to do connectivity or sidewalks or trail improvements. That's a multi-municipal connector and could be a really cool project that, you know, if that's something that we can pair with anything else, or could be a recommendation that comes out of the Parks Master Plan that's currently underway. You know, it's good to have some ideas for what else might we be able to pair something like this with to drum up interest and funding. It may not happen, but we're thinking about. If we keep going though with our agenda, the rest of our agenda is pretty straightforward. We have some updates on just general things happening in Crafton. The zoning we already went over. Greg, you didn't really miss anything. We just said that we're still waiting for that grant funding and it's anticipated.
Seems positive.
And end of October. We did prepare, Lydia actually prepared a zoning pamphlet with some information that we published in our newsletter. So and that might be something that Ingram would like to do as you get closer to the zoning project starting. We wanted to get some early community awareness out there about just the fundamentals of zoning, how it works, what the benefits are for the community. Where we left off at the beginning of this meeting was with the Parks Master Plan update. We did have our second steering committee meeting, and kind of the high level updates there are that they are planning a series of community events. The dates have not been announced yet, but they're looking at fall, October, November, probably November. They'll be having some community events. So as soon as we know those dates, they'll be shared. The Parks Master Plan is intended to wrap up in January, I believe. It's only a 6-month process. So it'll be moving along pretty quickly. The community will have some events in November where they can give their feedback, and then the consultant will be wrapping up that Parks Master Plan. And it focuses specifically on park spaces that the borough owns. So that is something that I think the consultant is going to need to clearly communicate to everyone who's involved in the process. It's really easy for people to think bigger than that. And it's fun to think bigger than that, but they also are, you know, they need to be clear about what they're actually going to do for us. And they're focusing on the park spaces that we own. Eric, anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. Like I said, I think that the phrase that I'd like to remove from our vernacular is the Duncan property, and call it CIT North and CIT South. There are two properties that Crafton owns. One is north of the CIT property, other is south of the CIT property. Both are new acquisitions to the borough since the last park plan. And since they're green space, they really should fall underneath the park planning vision. I think that there is an opportunity for us as a planning commission, and as, you know, really a conduit to a community and what we do, to help formulate some recommendations and to help bubble up some ideas about how to get people engaged and providing insight as to what they think that those things could become. Right now, they're vacant land. Not there's anything wrong with that, but there is potential in that valley for so much more. So I think she took us an hour and 20 minutes to get to the point, but we did get to a point where I think we had some meaningful dialogue around the former Duncan properties.
They did say that at their, so with the two first steering committee meetings, they've generally just been gathering ideas and data gathering.
Right.
Not much has come out of it in terms of like new recommendations. It's just been kind of baseline data gathering, getting updates on current conditions and input from the steering committee members about anything that they missed in their data gathering, anything they weren't aware of. And when they do the community meetings, they are planning to have some, what they called very diagrammatic conceptual options for different parks around, different park spaces around Crafton, which I think is potentially going to be confusing, but I'm also not sure what the planning commission is really able to do in advance of that, because they haven't announced those dates yet. And I think if we were to plan anything else, we would be like, if we were to do a workshop for that, it would be around the same time as their event, which I think would be confusing and conflicting. So I'm open to ideas, but I don't really know if there's much that we can do besides hope that they do a good job with community engagement.
I think that's the point, Kirsten. I think that's a great opportunity for us to have dialogue is what could we offer to this process, right? Because we've demonstrated that we've gotten some pretty good feedback from the community. We've had a pretty good return on our ability to get some surveys out, but that's, I mean, those are all the job of the consultant to do that. As what was her name also Lydia was the person that joined us tonight? Yeah, you know, she said, yeah, that's why it's a lot of work, that's why you pay a consultant. So I get it, but is there anything that meaningful that we could offer to them as a group to help drive the process? I don't know. I put that out there for us to think about it, you know, but you know, it seems like there should be. Collaboration is a simple word to say, but a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it's kind of hard as somebody that hasn't participated in these steering committee meetings to have any input on this. I don't know what they're planning or.
There really haven't. There is nothing to give input on yet, except just that early data gathering. They've been asking questions like, what do you think the parks need? What is the condition of them? Are there any parks that we missed on our map? Are there any trails we missed on our map? Which ones do you guys like best? Which are the same questions they'll be asking again when they go to the community meeting. They're just getting initial feedback to make sure that their maps are more correct when they get to that public event.
And I will say that I was completely offended and completely disturbed by the lack of interest in council to support these convenings as being web-based, or at least offering the accessibility of web-based. I was told unequivocally by what is her name, Coletta, unequivocally that there will be no Zoom component to these meetings. So with that in mind, there's plenty of room in that borough office, you know, even if we were to actually properly social distance, but there's plenty of room. Lydia, you're the only person that I am aware of in the community who's not present. So I would suggest that probably you should attend if you're willing. I would think that you should be, because you have great ideas. You have a terrific asset. You have a tremendous mind. You know, why wouldn't, you know, we have you there? I mean, Greg is there. Kirsten is there. Colton, I don't know, but you know, I mean, it just seems like you're like noticeably absent and a tremendous asset. So I would think that you should come.
I mean, there's two representatives from the planning commission already.
So, I mean, like I said, I just think there is room, and it's not. I don't know.
I'm definitely willing to and willing.
All right,
and-
I'm gonna
and
push for that. I'm gonna do everything I can to push for it, because I think it's ridiculous. You know,
Can I finish what I was saying?
I'm so sorry.
I'm planning and willing to attend all the public components, so I think I'll be able to add my
Okay.
input there.
Then I won't do anything. Seems just strange to me. I don't know.
But
Anyway,
it-
move forward.
from-
I've wasted
from
enough of
what
your
I'm-
time.
From what I'm hearing, it sounds like accessibility to the meetings may be an issue if there will not be a Zoom component for maybe the public input. So maybe the planning commission can offer some sort of virtual addition to get some voices that we wouldn't otherwise have in a physical presence.
We don't have their dates yet for the next steering committee meeting. They haven't set dates. For the public events, they haven't set dates, and they did not tell us what format it would be.
Okay.
Remind me, Eric, I believe I asked that question, what format it would be, and she said they hadn't decided yet. Is that right?
Yeah,
I did ask that question, right?
Yes, there. Yes.
Um,
And like I said, I mean no one any ill will. I just think it's silly in 2021, in the midst of the crap that we all have to live through every day, to not offer that as an option is just, to me, the definition of absurd. I'm sure it's not as great as being in person and all together kumbaya. Don't get me wrong, and don't get me started. But the fact that you don't even offer it, I was in the hospital with a sick mother, would have been happy to attend because I was losing my mind. I had nothing to do but waste my time and wait back in August for the first one and had to miss the meeting. It was strange to me to be told that there will be no component for Zoom because I'm sorry. I'm glad this is recorded and that others can hear it at some point that may have interest.
Would we like to, as a planning commission, make any recommendations for how they do the public meeting? We can certainly recommend that they hold it in a certain format or in a certain place, or motion that council request that it have a certain type of format. Do we want to talk about that? The other idea I have that we can talk about if we want is that I don't know if we want to do a full workshop focused on this that might conflict with their events, but we could advertise our next month's planning commission meeting as having an open community dialogue in advance of their public meeting to, let people learn a little bit more about it and before the public event.
Well, I will lobby this group and say we have an outdoor band shell with microphones and a meeting space with bleachers at Crafton Park. There's absolutely no reason that such an event couldn't be held outdoors. The
In
weather's still the weather's still with us. It could be done. I don't think that it would be impossible. But like I said, we'd have to be creative, and I just think that it would be an interesting way to get people out. I don't know. I just don't think that riding the elevator up to the second floor of the borough office is gonna ever get anybody out. But that's just my opinion.
That's a recommendation we can give to the consultant. I mean, that's something you can give as a steering committee member, or we can give as a planning commission.
I will motion for this commission to consider making that as a recommendation, whatever I just said about the Crafton Park's band shell microphones and outdoor. I'll bring the hot cocoa if necessary, but can we maybe get a second and discuss and maybe vote to pass that on to council?
I'll second that. I think
Discussion?
it's a good idea to at least recommend that they do an outdoor location and give them that location. Because I don't know if they're getting much feedback otherwise on location. Did we lose Eric?
No, I'm here, just averting crises.
Are we all in favor?
I'll say I don't personally understand why it can't be done online. This is the first I'm hearing that that was not even remotely an option for it to be done online. So I apologize that I wasn't aware of that. I don't see why it can't be.
Just to be clear, the steering committee meetings are not online. We have no idea what the public ones will be.
Right.
Even still, I mean, I don't see why that's not something that can't necessarily be held online. But nonetheless, I mean, I agree with this. I mean, yeah, but you know, if we want to do something outside, I'm good with that. I'm good with having it online. I'm good with whatever. So
Lydia, do you have a vote?
I
Right.
just see a hand up. I'm not sure if we're taking comments from citizens before we vote.
Well, Greg, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself? You are on the steering committee, so go ahead and hear from you too.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing is that if you're going to vote on a outside public forum, that we should urge the consultant to be very prepared and that there should be really good audio visual. I mean, get a big screen, whether it's a projection, you know, I mean, some sort of a projection screen or something. This is getting so complicated between the property discussion and every aspect. I think that my personal opinion is this steering committee, the consultant is doing a very, very poor job. I've never been to such a confusing tobacco in my life. So I would say part of your recommendation should be that the consultant is extremely prepared with audio visual so that there's no confusion on what is in dealing with the public. So I think the more
Greg, can I jump in and comment on that real quick?
Yes.
So the consultant's deliverable is to have his public forum, right? So that should happen one way or the other. What our discussion is right now is making a recommendation around what should be the context of how that public forum is presented to the public via Zoom, in the borough chamber, in the, you know, on a community lawn of some sort. I'm just suggesting, you know, why not, since it's about the parks, do it in the park. And I think I heard you loud and clear in saying that, you know, make sure the audio visual, the PowerPoint, the display, whatever it should be, you know, that probably should be something a professional consultant can handle. But I share the same doubt.
I only bring it up before you vote because I don't know in your motion what all you would put in. So if that has to be part of the motion for audio visual to avoid confusion, maybe it's in your motion, but that's my only comment right now.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Since we haven't finished voting yet, are we all okay if I propose a new motion that rewords this a bit? And perhaps adds a few things, because this particular motion is really only going to be a recommendation that doesn't even end with council. It goes to a consultant. So it's very, very much just a recommendation, but I think it's worth giving our ideas. So I would suggest that we motion to recommend to the consultant and to recommend that council recommend to the consultant that they have their public engagement to include an outdoor publicly accessible location, such as the bandstand in the park. That they ensure there's good audio visual that allows everyone to participate, and that they offer some kind of online component for those who can't attend.
Second that motion.
Yeah, let's take a roll call vote. I agree.
I agree.
yes, I agree.
All right, so that motion passes Lydia, did you get the wording down?
No, I didn't.
I closed the document. I'm sorry. I could have been typing.
Okay, outdoor location, accessible to all with audio visual that allows participation and an online component of some sort. Okay. Are there any other questions about the parks plan, master plan update, or should we go on to the rest of our agenda? I did have an update for everyone. The conditional use permit that drove us crazy and took 4 hours of our time in 2 different meetings over this past month has passed council. They did not keep our conditions. Thought we should all know that.
Yeah, I just, you know, I think that it's worth saying because it's a public record. Not only were we insulted and called names, that the Wolbert brothers actually threatened to come to our homes. I mean, if that is not the quintessential problem of what is the fabric that needs to tear between the way it's always been, because clearly the Wolberts have always done it this way, and the way that we need to have an equitable, fair, and open environment. This was clear that this was a foregone conclusion. It was decided before it was upon us. If I make you uncomfortable or offended, but I feel that I was threatened, that I was insulted, that I was treated as a second-rate neighbor by the Wolberts' insistence that they have nothing to do but progress, and we simply impede it. So I'll rest it there, but I was just disgusted at their behavior.
I will say that I was very, very proud of this planning commission for having put so much time into it. I'm sorry that we put all that time into it and the conditions weren't kept. They did keep the conditions that the application be completed, but that was not really a condition. That was basic code.
The paving was completed before they actually approved it.
They were issued a stop work order actually, because they started work before they got the permit. Anyways, it has passed. I very much appreciate the time that you all put in. I am a little apologetic that I had us do that, thinking that it might at least make a difference on the conditions, and it did not. But I also want to let everyone know that I will not be, as long as I am chairman, I will not be agreeing to let us do another hearing of that sort again. That hearing was expedited and didn't follow the requirements of code. And it was a huge headache for all of us, and it cost us a lot of time, and it had no impact in the end. And so I will be clear in the future. And I didn't even know this when we started. This was our first conditional use permit since any of us have been on this planning commission. And so I had to do some research into what our code actually requires of it. And they do have to submit a full application before we are required to meet. They do have to submit their documentation with a certain amount of advance notice, with a certain number of days in advance. And in the future, I will be requiring that. I won't be convening us without having those conditions met.
Thank you, Kirsten.
With that said, I'll just say too, I feel that I should say that I apologize to all of you guys as well, and Kirsten, considering that I was the one that expedited this process, at least to get the ball rolling from that respect. And I actually was not even there to vote on any of it anyway, because I had a funeral I had to attend to. I was not able to attend the council meeting, but neither here nor there. I apologize to you guys, since I was the one that expedited the process in the first place.
Well, thanks, Colton. But I think the good thing is we all learned a lot about what to do next time. none of us had done one of those processes before. So now we know better next time, and I will make sure next time that we have all the documentation in and we have advance notice before we take our time to go through one of those.
Yeah, I think we all should not be afraid to push back if we don't feel like the borough has done an adequate job screening for administrative completeness. I think that was a major pitfall. Everybody was trying to move things along, and I think the borough manager saw council wanted to expedite it, so he didn't put his foot down as far as the application materials. Maybe he should have. Or
We were all, okay, I'll let you finish. I
yeah,
apologize.
or then when we saw that it was incomplete, we should have just said, we can't hold this meeting, we'll reschedule it. You know, there were like multiple layers that broke down, I think, with this situation.
I think we all
I-
really tried to be nice, and we really tried to help the process move. And as Eric said, we were berated for it, and it's unfortunate, and it also didn't have any kind of impact in the end. So
It was not only council, it was not only the misbehavior and the terrible neighborhoodly behavior of the Wolberts, but it was also the solicitor. And I'll tell you, in retrospect, I really thought that was rather, well, it was flat out bullying, saying that we had to come to an answer, basically kept us, for another half an hour in the first meeting, pushed us to a second meeting around the fact that we were required to make some, no, we weren't required to come to a consensus. We were required to make a recommendation, and our recommendation could have been that which was the outcome of the first meeting, which may have been, we are split. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt that we were pressured to make a consensus out of something that we didn't necessarily have to.
we also could absolutely and legally made our consensus be, we are not going to continue this meeting because the application is not complete.
A lot
In
of,
retrospect, I wish that I had pushed that a bit more.
Yeah, I
I-
think that
I-
was our answer.
I think this was a productive conversation about these past events. Thank you.
And I just want to apologize in the process of expediting this. While that was the motion from council, and being that I'm on council and I was the one that sort of set everything up ahead of time to try and get the ball rolling. Again, I do apologize because I was unaware at the time, and I was under the impression that everything was in fact complete to go to us. And then, of course, as you all know, we didn't find that out until a couple hours before that it wasn't in fact complete. So again, I want to apologize to all of you for that as well, because I was under the impression that it was complete when it was in fact not.
Well, so we are, we are sorry all around, but we also, I appreciate the effort everyone put in to trying to figure out how to do the best thing with that situation.
On the bricks.
On to bricks. Last items here are just items I wanted everyone to be aware of. Brick Street inventory. I spoke to Greg Wozniak a few weeks ago. We went through Google Earth street by street, and we took an inventory of where our brick streets are. Greg has some further thoughts on what he would like to do with that. And ultimately, we're continuing to, have this idea in mind that once Mount Lebanon finishes their brick street policy, we can have our brick street inventory that will see, take stock of where we have brick streets and what condition they're in, and then also have that example of their brick street policy, and then reconsider whether there are parts of that we would like to recommend that the council look into doing as well for Crafton. We're going to keep going because we have citizen comments on the end. So sorry, Greg, but you'll have your chance to share further thoughts about brick streets. Couple of final just follow-up items from the borough manager. We talked about doing a parking study or doing some test parking lines at our last meeting. We did not motion to proceed. We decided to reach out with just a more informal request to the borough manager first about what that would cost or what that would entail. And he said that a parking study would most likely be needed if we did this on Union, but that it's feasible that we could do it on around the busways, that Public Works has the capacity to take that on. So
I just walked that the other morning. I thought it was all pretty well laid out in terms of the parking spaces.
I think we could motion on this now, or what I would like to do is actually measure out how many spaces we would be able to get if it were demarcated, and then look at that next time, if that works for all of you.
Happy to.
You mean personally go out and one of us measure the spaces? Is that what you mean?
I am happy to do that. I was planning on doing it. I got a bit derailed over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I wouldn't mind
Yeah.
doing it either. I was just curious if that was what you meant.
What I meant. Mhm.
Yeah, that's fine. I would be fine doing that as well. I would just need to know some dimensions of what exactly a parking space would consist of, because I do not know that.
Even borough manager Doug said that even just to have those lines done in that location, he would still have Gateway or engineers draw up a plan that Public Works could follow. So it would be taking some money from them to basically do something that we could do ourselves to at least decide if we want it before we pay for them to do
Now,
the.
the question is a parking space 18 feet long? Is it 12 feet long? Is it 32 feet long?
Mhm.
I think that Colton, did I get it right? Is that what you're asking?
Not so much asking, just pointing out that, if I were to go out there with a tape measure, I would need to know what a parking space would
Yeah.
have to be lined out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do not know the answer to that. Can
Yeah,
we-
and I wasn't really answering that question, but they're generally about 20 feet, Colton, but they do range. They can be larger, especially on a curve. You and I can talk about that later and maybe go out together at one point to get it done.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. That sounds great.
And then the other item is our commercial business registry, and we do not have that yet. So that's still waiting, still requested.
I have a house full of young and aspiring carpenters, all under 12 years old, if you need some tape measure helpers when you get around to doing it, just say no. Yeah, I showed you guys, right, the trash that I had in terms of the Google map. Did I show you that? I think I did last time.
You showed us an example of what you could do with Google Maps.
I took the map that I found and I put it into Google.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna, we're already run over. It's not very attractive. Let's just say that. So hopefully
You're
we
talking
get
about the
something.
commercial business registry, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, you showed us that. That was really cool.
yeah. So if we get real data, then it's minutes, like super simple. And if you embed it in a website, you can put on the bottom, hey, you got a problem here, fill out the survey, and we can just update it with the spreadsheet that comes up when they fill out their business. Would be that simple.
So yeah, we don't have that data yet, and I didn't push Doug too much on it because I know these past few weeks have been full of lots of special meetings. But I will get back to him and try to get that for next month. Rich hasn't shared August minutes yet.
Hey, just before we leave that concept, I put my hand up because I'm slap happy. It's been a very long week. Do we want to just maybe go and put up a form on the website, and for businesses who are interested, they fill out the form and we put up that as a map?
I think it would be a little cleaner and simpler to just get the data already gathered.
I just noticed that there were a lot of like home offices, like I have a home office, so it shows up on a tax register. Like there's a lot of that kind of stuff that was in the data. So, I mean, there's only, 100 or so on businesses. If we put it out there and they say, hey, if you're interested, fill out this form. You could be on the Crafton, bloody blah, right? Think about it. Just think about it. We don't have to do anything now, but if we don't get anywhere from from the fella at the Borough. You know, maybe we just get a link out there, and for people who are interested in putting their business up on the, you know, on the website, they can fill out the survey and boom, it just would populate their business on the map. So,
You can come back to that, Eric. I'm trying to help us go quickly here.
yeah.
I'm trying.
sorry.
I know we've spent far more time this past month on planning commission meetings than we usually do.
My fault.
I mean, most of it was not your fault. And we've had good conversation tonight, but I am trying to let everybody have some evening left. Rich is not here, and he was not able to share August minutes with me. So we will have to review those next month. Which leads us to citizen comments. We still have Greg and Alice on the line. Thank you for sticking with us all this time. Are there any citizen comments before we end?
This is Greg. I just gonna tell you about the Brick Street stuff. I'm still waiting for Mount Lebanon to give us a view of their Brick Street policy, and I thank you for working with me on those Brick Streets a few weeks ago. So that's it.
All right.
Alice, motion to adjourn.
And I will second that.
Agreed.
You guys rock. Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. 8:20, we're adjourning.
Night.
Have a good night.
Good night.